Hi everyone in Algebra 2B. Today we're going to be going over questions on 111 Part B, starting on number 16. So for number 16, I'm going to start by separating out this inequality, where we're going to have negative 2 is not greater than x plus 5. And then you're going to have x plus 5 is less than 4. So because of this slash in the inequality, I am going to flip it and add an equal sign. Then I'm going to move the 5 to the other side by subtracting 5. So I have negative 7 is less than or equal to x, but I do want to flip that so the x is on the left-hand side. So I have x is going to be greater than or equal to negative 7. Then I'm going to move the 5 to the other side by subtracting it. So that would be x is going to be less than negative 1. Now we're graphing integers, so that's going to be points, not just the dot with the arrow. So I have negative 9. Okay, so there's my number line. Notice that I extend it past 2 of either points. But on negative 1, we're going to have an open circle, so it's not going to be filled in on negative 1. It will be filled in on negative 7. And if it says it's greater than negative 7, I'm going to go to the right of negative 7. But it's strictly less than negative 1, so it would be below negative 1. So that means it's going to be all the points between negative 1 and negative 7. And that would look like this. So your only options would be negative 2 to negative 7. Now for number 17, I'm going to start by multiplying this top equation by 5, bottom equation by 1,000 to get rid of the decimal place. In the top equation, I'm going to end up with 3x minus 2y equals negative 50. In the bottom equation, I would end up with positive 3x plus 200y equals 1,970. Now I'm going to do elimination on this one, so I'm going to multiply the top equation by negative 1. That would give me negative 3x plus 2y equals 50, and I'm adding that to positive 3x plus 200y equals 1,970. Now my x's are going to cancel, and I get 202y equals 2020, which means y is going to be equal to 10. Now that I know what y is equal to, I'm going to plug it into the top equation. So that would be 3x minus 2 times 10 equals negative 10. Negative 2 times 10 is negative 20, so I'm going to add 20 to the other side. That should be negative 50. My bad. No. I'm right. Negative 10. Negative 50. Oh my goodness. My bad. Negative 50. So that'd be 3x equals negative 30. So x is going to be equal to negative 10. I'm so sorry, that was very confusing. So x is negative 10, and then y is going to be equal to positive 10. So using this equation right here. Now looking at number 18, what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to solve for x in the top equation, which would give me x is equal to 10 minus 2y. I'm going to plug that into the middle equation, which would give me 10 minus 2y minus 3z equals negative 16. So I'm going to move the 10 to the other side, and I would get negative 2y minus 3z equals negative 26. And I'm actually going to do elimination with this bottom equation and this equation by multiplying this equation by 2. And that would give me positive 2y plus 4z is equal to 32. And then the y's will cancel, and I'm going to get z is equal to 6. Now that I know what z is equal to, I'm going to solve for what y is equal to, because y plus 2 times 6 equals 16. So I'm going to subtract 12. So y is going to be equal to 4. Then for x, use the top equation. It would be x is equal to 10 minus 2 times 4. So x is going to be equal to 2. Now looking at number 19, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for x. So x will be equal to y plus 1. And I'm going to plug that into this equation right here. So that would be y plus 1 squared plus y squared equals 4. When I multiply that out, I'm going to get y squared plus 2y plus 1 plus y squared minus 4 equals 0. I'm setting it equal to 0. So 2y squared plus 2y minus 3 equals 0. To solve, I'm actually going to complete the square. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. And that would give me y squared plus y equals 3 over 2. You're going to take half of the 1. So that'd be y plus 1/2 squared. You're going to add 1/4 to both sides. Making a common denominator, you would get 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 1 is going to be 7 over 4. You'll take the square root of both sides, so that's going to give me y plus 1/2 equals plus or minus the square root of 7 over 2. And then your result is going to be y is equal to negative 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 2. And now we have to solve for x by plugging it into the top equation. So x is going to be equal to negative 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 2 plus 1. And you can add the 1 and the negative 1/2, which would give you positive 1/2. But the root 7 over 2 is going to stay the same. So all you did was add the 1 and the negative 1/2 together. Now for number 20, we're solving by completing the square, which is exactly what we just did on the last problem. So you're going to start by dividing everything by negative 2. And I'm going to move the 5 over 2 to the other side. So I get x squared minus 3 over 2x equals 5 over 2. You're going to take half of the negative 3 over 2, which is negative 3 over 4. So this would turn into x minus 3 over 4 squared. When I square this, this is going to be 9 over 16. And you're going to make a common denominator. So that would be 49 over 16. Now you're going to want to take the square root of both sides. So that would be x minus 3 over 4 equals plus or minus 7 over 4. And you're going to add 3 over 4 to both sides. So that would be 3 over 4 plus or minus 7 over 4. So 3 plus 7 is 10. 10 over 4 would be 5 over 2. Then 3 minus 7 would be negative 4. Negative 4 over 4 would be negative 1. So your two answers are 5 over 2 and negative 1. Now looking at number 21, we're going to be converting 40 inches per second to meters per hour. So you're going to start by converting from inches to centimeters. There are 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch and 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Now seconds to hours, there's 60 seconds in 1 minute and 60 minutes in 1 hour. So your answer is just what you have there, which would be 40 times 2.54 times 60 squared over 100, and that's going to be meters per hour. Okay, now number 22, I to the third is equivalent to negative I. I squared is equal to negative 1. So you would have negative 2i minus, when you multiply the same number in the square root, it just becomes that number, which would be negative 3 over 4 plus 3. So you have negative 2i plus 3 over 7. And that should conclude number 22. I just want to confirm that I did not mess up anything on that one, because that answer seems a little bit too simple. But then we're going to move on to number 23. To get rid of the square root in the denominator, I'm going to multiply by the conjugate, which means you flip the sign of one of the values in the denominator. So 3 plus root 3 and 3 plus root 3. If you do 2 root 3 times 3, that would be 6 root 3. 2 root 3 times root 3 would be 2 times 3. 2 times 3 would be 6. And then 2 times root 3 would be 2 root 3. Now the denominator, 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times root 3 is 3 root 3. Negative root 3 times 3 would be negative 3 root 3. And then negative root 3 times root 3 would be negative 3. The 3 root 3's are going to cancel. And in the numerator, I have 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 6, which is going to give me 12, plus 8 root 3. And that's all going to be over 6. I think in the answer key, they're going to, no, they don't separate it, but you're going to divide everything by 2. So that would be 6 plus 4 root 3 all over 3. Now moving on to number 24, I'm going to start with just distribution and bringing the denominator up to the numerator. So I have a to the x over 2. Then I'm going to have y to the 1 minus x over 2. When I bring this up to the top, it's going to become negative 3x. And I bring this up to the top, it's going to be positive 2x. Now, if your bases are the same, you want to add exponents together. So I'm going to have a to the x over 2 minus 3x over 1. Then I have y to the 1 minus x over 2 plus 2x over 1. And all I want to do is make common denominators. So this would turn into a x minus 6 would be negative 5x over 2. And then for y, I have 1, and then negative x plus 4 would be 3x over 2. And that would conclude number 24. Now looking at number 25, I'm just going to start by changing this into exponential form. So this would be xy to the power of 1/2, and then x squared y to the power of 1/2, because there are no values on the outside of those square roots. You're going to distribute that. So I'm going to have x to the 1/2, y to the 1/2, x to the 1, and y to the 1/2. So if I add the 1 and the 1/2, and then for the y, I add the 1/2 and the 1/2, I'm going to end up with x to the power of 3 over 2, and then y to the power of 1. Because 1/2 plus 1/2 is 2 over 2, and therefore equal to 1. Now for number 26, the first thing that I have to do is get rid of the square root that's in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 7, the square root of 2. I'm going to simplify 126, so that'll be 2 and 63. Then 3 and 21, then 3 and 7. So there's the pair of 3's there. So I have root 14 over 7 minus 3 root 14 over 2 plus 6 square root 14 over 1. Common denominator is going to be 14, so I'm going to multiply these by 14, this by 7, and this by 2. And that would give me 2 root 14 minus 21 root 14 plus 6 times 14 is 84 root 14 all over 14. So my result, 2 minus 21 plus 84 equals 65 root 14 over 14. Not sure where I got root 17 from. Should have been a 4. And this is your result. Now moving on to number 27. All I need to do first for the first one is going to be to divide by -1, but that does flip the inequality. So that means I have y is greater than -3. It's going to be a dotted line, and you're going to shade everything above it. For this next one, I just need to move the 3x to the other side. So I have y is less than or equal to -3x plus 3. This is going to be a solid line, and we're going to shade everything below it. So -3 on the y-axis is here. So I would just put a dotted line through that. Then plus 3, and the slope is down 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1. Down 3 over 1 is going to look like this. Okay, now comes the shading portion of the problem. So it says to shade everything above the dotted line. So that would be everything up here. Everything above. And then shade everything below the solid line. So that would be everything here. So your answer is going to be this section here, below the solid line and above the dotted line. Now looking at number 28. For this first line, it goes to the left 6 spaces. That's negative 6 spaces on the x-axis. So that would be negative 6.00r and then plus 0.00u because it's not going up or down. Oops. Now I'm going to draw a right triangle in quadrant 1. The r is going to be positive and the u is going to be positive. So for x, it's going to be 20 times cosine of 45. Then for y, it's going to be 20 times sine of 45. That's going to give me 14.14. Then 20 times 45 sine equals, and that's the same thing. They are both going to be positive, like I said, so that's going to be 14.14r plus 14.14u. For the first one, when you subtract 6 from it, you get 8.14r, and then plus 14.14u. And that's your result for number 28. Now looking at number 29, the first thing that I'm going to do is move everything over to the left-hand side, which would give you 2x squared minus x minus 10 equals 0. So I need two numbers that I'm going to multiply the first and the last term. So 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 20, but add up to give me negative 1. And that would be negative 5 and positive 4. They add up to give me negative 1. So the negative 4 or the negative 5 and the 4 are going to replace my negative x. So for step 3, you have 2x squared minus 5x plus 4x plus 10 equals 0. Now you'll separate those into two separate parentheses. So you have 2x squared minus 5x plus 4x plus 10 equals 0. In the first parentheses, the only thing you can factor out is an x, leaving you with 2x minus 5. Second parenthesis, the only thing you can factor out is going to be, this should be a minus, 2, which would be 2x minus 5 as well. And then you're going to factor out that 2x minus 5, and then your second parenthesis will be what's left over, which would be x plus 2. Now you're done factoring, but you have to solve. So I'm going to set each of these equal to 0. So 2x minus 5 equals 0. And then x plus 2 equals 0. So when I move the 5 to the other side, I add it. So my first answer is going to be x is equal to 5 over 2. My second answer is x is equal to negative 2, because when you move the 2 to the other side, it becomes negative. And this is your factoring, so from lesson 105, we've been getting a lot of practice on that. Now for number 30, I'm going to write it in descending order, and I'm also going to factor out an x, but move everything to the left-hand side. So that would be x times 2x squared minus 7x plus, minus 15 equals 0. Now we're going to multiply the first and the last term. So that's going to be 2 times negative 15 gives me negative 30. I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 30, but add up to give me negative 7. And those two values would be negative 10 times 3 is negative 30, and that adds up to negative 7. So now instead of this negative 7x, you're going to have negative 10x and 3x. So that would be 2x squared minus 10x plus 3x minus 15 equals 0. These will both be two separate parentheses. So you get 2x squared minus 10x plus 3x minus 15. Now what can you factor out? Well, in the first parenthesis, you should be able to factor out a 2 and an x, leaving you with x minus 5. Second parenthesis, you can factor out a 3, which would leave you with x minus 5. And now what you're going to do is you're going to factor out this x minus 5. So you have x times x minus 5 times 2x plus 3. And you're done factoring, but now you have to solve. So you're going to set each of these equal to 0. So the first answer is going to be x is equal to 0. Second, x minus 5 equals 0. Third, 2x plus 3 equals 0. So this one you're going to move the 5. This one you're going to move the 3. So I have three answers. X is going to be equal to negative 3 over 2. X is equal to 0. And then x is equal to positive 5. And that should conclude all of your questions from lesson 111B. I hope you guys all have a great day. Bye.